felt the gentle touch of spirit or another person's emotions or physical issues like they were your own? Well, today on Wednesdays with Willa, we're going to be talking about the soul sense related to clairsentience. And feeling clairsentience is one of my favorite ways to connect with spirit. And it'll be a great topic for today. For those of you who are new to my show, this is Wednesdays with Willa, and it's my weekly podcast show that airs on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern on my Facebook page. It's an opportunity for us to have a spiritual conversation relating to a topic having to do with either spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, or more. And I usually have a special guest on the show, and you can look back at the archive videos of Wednesdays with Willa if you go to my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. This will also go out on my YouTube channel, so you can do a search for videos, your favorite guest I've had or a topic, and it'll pop up for you. This also goes out on blogtalkradio.com/Lilydale Radio. I'm part of the Lilydale Radio family, and there are shows that happen throughout the week, so I encourage you to tune in that way. It's a listen-only podcast version, but most people like to see and hear me, so welcome to Facebook, welcome to YouTube. And today on my show, I'm delighted to have back with me Celeste Elliott. Thank you for being here today, Celeste.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And Celeste has been a frequent visitor on the show. We usually are able to talk about wonderful things having to do with mediumship. She is a registered Lilydale medium, has been for a number of years, and we're two of the youngest of that group. In fact, we did a great show called Young Mediums, so you can search for that if you'd like. So you can binge watch the shows with Celeste Elliott. And one of the things that's so special about Celeste, she really gives to the Lilydale community, but she's just one of the most compassionate people I've met. She really knows how to meet people wherever they're at with humor as well. And you have your own podcast show that airs on Thursday mornings. I know you're going to start that back up again.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're part of the same Lilydale family, and it's beautiful. I'm glad that you're here on the show today. The two of us are clairsentient mediums, and we're going to talk more about what is clairsentience, what is it to experience that and really feel it on deep levels. So let's take it away.
Well, thank you so much. Okay. That's good. Well, yeah, I mean, I feel the pressure now because you said that I had humor. We didn't say it was good humor though, so that's okay. Do our best.
Do our best. Oh, I forgot to mention, if you are interested in the soul senses, last week I did the 5 clairs and beyond. So you can go back and view last week's show. You'll learn what all the different clairs are and be able to recognize how you possibly have already been experiencing them for yourself.
Beautiful.
But I thought it'd be good to focus on clairsentience because it's such a rich and juicy one.
So for those of you who wonder what mediums talk about when we get together, we do get together and gossip about the spirit people and who our favorites are. So that's, clairsentience is how both Willa and I work, and we have that in common. So that's been a wonderful thing. And I was getting nervous because I knew the door opened behind me and I was kind of trying to deflect away from that in case you were wondering. But so I have a question, Willa, which is when you did your show last week and you talked about the 5 senses and beyond, did you break clairsentience? Did you talk about clairsentience and did you talk about clairempathy?
I didn't break it down for them to that extent. We did mention about it, but it was more of an overview of the clairs so that they would have a sense of what those are and that it's not just 5 clairs. We've got claircognizance. We've got all other ways of experiencing it, especially because I knew you were coming on the show this week so that we could do a deep dive. But clair means clear, and that means sentience means feeling. So it's clear feeling. And it's when we have an experience where we can feel the touch of spirit on our body, or we can feel things within our own system that give us information about what someone is currently going through or what they did go through. And it helps us to be more empathetic with people that are here on this earth plane when they're going through things. We might get sympathy pains, like that sense of like the husbands when their wife is pregnant and they could feel sympathy pains.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. My husband did too. But it's something that it's beautiful that we have that. So we have those mirror neurons that assist us in that empathy.
Yes.
That help us to be kind of in someone else's shoes, but not have to live there. And that's a distinction I like to make. But when it comes to spirit, we can connect with them and feel possibly what they passed from, or what their personality was when they were here, their feelings about the client or sitter, and that relationship. And it's one of my favorite ways to work with spirit, because I'm able to really bring through the essence of spirit.
Exactly.
And it's the delicious part of mediumship for me.
Well, and I think a lot of people get concerned about being overwhelmed by that energy. You have a lot of people who, I think it's kind of come into the zeitgeist when we talk about people being empathic, and how some of that skill set resonates. And like you said, not just with people on the spirit side, but people in the living also. Because, you know, they're our psychic skills as well as our mediumship skills. And there's, you know, learning to figure out where the energy is coming from. You're not just using one skill set, you're using multiple. And clairsentience is the catch-all for psychic ability, right? So it used to be that people referred to anybody who was psychic or mediumistic as clairvoyant, even if they didn't have vision. But in actuality, it's clairsentience. So
Yeah, because we can see by feeling. And I did mention that in last week's show. We can see by feeling. We can hear by feeling. It's an amalgamation that is you're able to make more of the distinction as you learn and grow in your own understanding of your mediumship and how you particularly work. But it can be a primary way of connecting with spirit that then, as I mentioned in last week's show, it can interface with the other clairs, and you can have them happening simultaneously within you. But back to the point about feeling overwhelmed, it can happen where a person could be very swamped with what's happening with another person, feeling it as their own or feeling spirit. But you have to get a baseline. I always tell my students, you have to have a baseline of what's yours and what's someone else's. And once you like, you kind of do your little body scan, you think, before you have this, and you go, okay, yeah, my right knee's hurting me, or I still have pain from where I got burned on my hand when I was in the kitchen the other day. Stuff like that. You start to have a sense of what's yours. And then when that comes through from spirit, you're able to discern, well, this is not my heart attack. This is not my stroke. This is not, I remember the first time I felt that, and I was like, oh my goodness, this hurts. But I quickly established that I was not going to let that perpetuate. This is something that, like 2 to 3 seconds at the most, like a quick little zing text message of information, and you don't have to live there. If anything's persisting, man, 15 minutes, you have to do a kick it to the curb. That's really important to do. So please know that that's something you can function well and get into harmony with yourself by acknowledging you're in control. You have the power.
100%. Exactly. And I think that's such an interesting and important point that people don't talk about enough. I make a joke that the best mediumship is premeditated. Um,
My famous the jokes.
Yes, there you go. And of course, and I laugh at my own because that's who I am. But it's such an important thing to, work on your own spiritual foundation and to do that meditation work, to be checking in with your own soul and your own body on a regular basis and building that relationship with Creator. And with your higher self and with the spirit world and your own loved ones. And I think that's something we forget. I started about 5 years ago, I started seeing people labeling themselves as spiritual mediums rather than m- mediums or spiritualist mediums or, that sort of thing. And I had to think about it. I was like, well, are there non-spiritual mediums? And in truth, I mean, there are people who are good antennas, but they don't have that basis of spirituality.
Right.
And if that's not your foundation, that's a great extension of your survival skills, but it's not really gonna help you further yourself. Um,
Yes. Yes.
and I think that's the difference. I know, just being around you with your work, and how you're helping people to heal and inspiring them and helping them move forward. And I very much feel that same way, So,
Yeah.
um,
I think
yeah,
that's an important distinction to the spiritual medium, because some people are like, what's a medium? Like it's become more and more in the vernacular, but for some people, when you look up what a medium is, it's not
yeah,
necessarily having to do with spirit contact at all. It can be, what art medium are we using, or medium? And it's like
right.
that kind of thing. So it makes a distinction that it's moving into the spiritual intuition and
Mhm.
into the spiritual mediumship. So
Yes.
yeah, I actually kind of like that term
Yeah.
myself, the spiritual medium, because as you said, there are people who do mediumship work, but they don't have a sense of the sacred joy of it.
Exactly. Yes.
They go into the haunted concepts, the fear mode, modalities about these things,
The
and
drama.
the drama. Oh, the drama, sell the tickets. And
Yeah.
so anyway, just so you understand that, when we work with spirit, we want to have uh, an even mind, be of even mind, and have a sense of ourselves and our own
Yeah,
spiritual unfoldment, because this is not just about mediumship unfoldment, it's who you are as a soul. And
exactly.
especially with clairsentience, when you're
Yeah.
feeling it, it's fantastic to feel vicariously, feel the love. Oh, the love is just I have to use the word delicious,
Yeah.
because it it is a thrill to connect with somebody who really knows how to love. And when you feel that love from spirit for the client, the sitter, and you can feel that reciprocity of love, it's
Yeah.
great to be in that zone in a reading.
And what a gift that is to the spirit world because you're holding space for all the people all the spirit communicators.
Yes.
And I don't mean to be reductive when I say it that way. I mean to be very respectful because they so want to be heard. And of course, most people in the living want to be heard. Um, you have your few sort of really introverted people that like they'll come to you when they're ready, but if all they want to do is come and sit by your side, when and that for them is interacting, and that's enough. They might not have their main message may be, I'm okay, I made it home, I love you, I'm here for you. Um, And that in itself, think of how much more energy it takes for an introvert to come through than an extrovert that's like, let me tell you all about it. And, it's um
Yeah, it's very
yeah,
true.
a whole
Personality has a lot of bearing on how the message or how the reading will go, because
exactly.
that personality persists after so-called death. Although I
Mhm.
like to say after they've had some growth, then you're getting version 2.0. But
True.
there's a
Yeah.
sense of you can't necessarily get an introvert to become an extrovert. I have become more extroverted over the years. I was
Same. Yeah.
very quiet as a child. I did not want to talk to anybody outside of my family.
Yeah.
If people came to the house, I would want to hide in my room and hope nobody told them I existed, because to be in someone else's energy was very demanding for me. And so
Yes.
a lot of people who are clairsentient or have that high level of empathy, you guys
Yeah.
know what I'm talking about. You have that same kind
Yeah.
of story that I do. And when I went to school, I was so excited to go to school. So excited. Oh my gosh, the bus. Oh, I'm gonna learn. I love learning. I love reading. Ooh. And I got there and people were weird. And they had all these dramas that I could feel in their energy. And it was really, really difficult for me in those beginning years. And I
Yeah.
wanted to shut down. And then
Right.
eventually I was able to kind of pull my own, find my own power, and eventually find my own voice, and have crept out of being an introvert and more into the extrovert. But I do feel as clairsentient mediums, uh, we tend to want some measure of solitude, and maybe you have to block some of that time off in our schedule
Yes.
so that we can restore and not have to be in someone else's energy or thoughts.
Exactly.
And that helps us
Yeah.
then to be 100% with people when we're with them. And that's an important tip I would give people who are clairsentient or empathic.
Yeah. And to know one's boundaries.
Mhm.
Um, boundaries are so important, both for the living and the spirit and those in spirit, because um, sometimes people don't know that they are captain of their own ship, and they don't know if they haven't gone for any training, they don't know that it's okay to set boundaries as to when they're wanting to do the mediumship and when they're not. They think they have to be on full blast all the time, and that's so exhausting.
Yeah, it'd be like saying
Yeah.
I'm going to be a doctor and never leave the hospital,
Yeah.
and it's constantly barraged
Mhm.
with the beeps and the the pagers and
Yeah.
the I have to be there because there's always somebody more in need.
Right.
All of a sudden, emergency, emergency, emergency. So I do advise people who are developing mediums that they recognize where they need to draw the line in the sand, whether they're clairsentient mediums or any other kind of mediums, that you set that standard for yourself. And I'd like to give them some examples, that if
Yes.
you could share some examples of clairsentience and how you've experienced feeling.
I was just gonna ask the same thing. So that's perfect. We're see, same mindset. So for me, the way that I would always pick up other people's energy, and I would pick up their physical stuff a lot as well, which could be rather unpleasant. And so that's something I had to kind of work on a bit. But so really I went for development training because I wanted to get a handle on it, not because I wanted it to necessarily get deeper. Because at that point, I could not have imagined going into mediumship as a career. Uh, that was not the initial goal by any means. And I know we both went for our college education and very different things. And yeah, so I really wanted to figure out um, how to not be overwhelmed. And so because it's sort of like asking, how does a fish know it's wet? I had to learn from an early age what was my stuff and what was not my stuff. Because I would walk in someplace and I would feel all the energy, just like you talked about with people at school. I think for me as well. But when I work with spirit now as a trained medium, because there is a distinction, we make a distinction between natural mediumship and trained mediumship. It's like Janet Nahavik used to describe it as putting on an overcoat. And for me, it's like I like to have a bit of a temperature change. I like to, I've already set my intention. I know that I'm going to honor however the spirit person wants to work. And if they want to work with me, if they're willing to get very close in my energy like that, I'm going to feel physically the distinction between their physicality and my own, whether they're taller than me, shorter than me. Every once in a while, I get somebody who will come in and their personality was, you have to sit up really tall. And so they'll come in from spirit and I'm like, oh, excuse me. I'm just gonna adjust my posture for you, and it's like, and saying to the client, oh, okay, well, I've got this female communicator or this male communicator, and this is what they were like, and they're telling me their posture would have been up very straight, and as you're sort of feeling into their energy and allowing them to be in conversation with you, which I think the thing that the spirit world that misses the most, the people, our loved ones, is having the back and forth conversation, with the living. And of course they have that with, the other people in spirit, but I've had spirit people thank me at the end because I've gotten into the habit of saying to them at the end of a session, well, how do you think that went? I mean, you get a sense of it as you're going along, but I picked that up from from the two of us studying under Mavis Patilla. How do you think that went? And checking in with them, and if they'll say to me sometimes, well, I missed having an honest to goodness back and forth conversation with my kid. And that, but that's something that the spirit world has been saying for 4 or 5 years now is, please engage me in normal conversation. I know from my perspective of being around you from spirit, how I think things are going for you. And I can pick up your energy in the living and know what you're putting out there. But I'd love for you to include me in that. And tell me about your new favorite book, or how you feel your kid is doing in soccer, or something like that, because that makes them feel so loved and so included. It's normalizing for them.
Yes, having that conversation, and when you're with a medium, you can really feel, usually in the session, that back and forth. That's how I like to do my particular mediumship, because there's such a wealth of emotion and feeling that can happen in those moments. And spirit really does appreciate being able to talk through a medium, to give those messages of love. So think about it. When it's your turn to pass, you're going to want to go check in on your people. And you're going to see, oh, okay, yeah, they're having a success here. They're having a difficulty here. That's how the ebb and flow of life is. So sometimes they just want to say, hey, I noticed that you renovated the kitchen. I really like it. Those are the cupboards I always said I wanted, kind of thing. So it could be those kind of everyday things that they're offering to show up, that they, in ways around you, show that they are still visiting, and they'll still wanting to be part of your life. And I don't feel that they're necessarily offended if the client, the sitter, doesn't feel them per se. They
Right.
they kind of learn, okay, that person's not really ready, or they're distracted in life. There are all kinds of
Right.
reasons that we talked about on past shows. But I do think that feeling spirit is so very special. And some clients tell me that they're like, oh my goodness, I can feel while we're talking, my mom is here.
Yeah,
They can feel the
exactly.
presence of spirit themselves.
Yeah.
And that's even more beautiful when that happens. And sometimes when we feel spirit, it can be, I just want to explain a little bit more on the clairsentience
Yeah,
level.
please.
For temperature shifts, I know in the
Yes.
movies like The Sixth Sense, they just love to use that dry ice and make sure that everybody's cold and teeth chattering practically because spirit has come in. A lot of times spirit's very warm, uh,
Yes.
and I'm not hot flash at all when yet. So I know, and I'm typically a cold person.
Right.
That's why I wear my scarves when spirit is around. A lot of times I get warm from them.
Hmm.
So
Same.
it's like being in the lake and you're swimming in the lake, especially in Casadega Lake. There are warm pockets and cold pockets
Right.
that you'll feel in the water, and that's a temperature distinction sometimes that you feel with spirit. You may notice spirit coming in on one side of your body more than the other. You may all of a sudden feel the dog just licked your leg from spirit, your pet
Yes.
that's coming to visit you again. You might feel the bed shift as your spouse that's passed is coming and visiting you, or you could swear your cat who's in spirit just jumped up on the bed. It's
Yeah.
you those kinds of feelings, those feel
Perfumes.
clairsentience
Yeah.
involved. And when we smell perfume, that's clairscent, which is different from clairsentience. But
Yes.
to feel their presence, it you'll might get a height difference. Like if they were really
Mhm.
built and jacked up, you might really feel the musculature feeling of
Mhm.
them, or if they were big with a belly, or
Yeah.
they were thin and frail, or all the
Mhm.
different body types that are out there. You may sense them on those physical levels.
It's the only way someone like me and you could know what it feels like to be bald. Um,
Shiny topped.
where's my hair? Um, yeah, exactly.
Or sometimes I'll put my hand up to my face and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a beard or have a mustache.
Yes,
And it's because
exactly.
I'm connecting with
Get
somebody.
the itch. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think because I am the scent thing, because I have, as a redhead, just we're notorious for allergies. And because certain scents, I will feel them before I even smell them. Um,
The
so
reaction of it. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
so I know sometimes when there's a dye or a perfume or something, so I will pick it up in feeling, and then I will move into
The smelling of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
So more than one
fragrance scents.
Claire is being utilized at that particular moment. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, which I think is a really spirit is going to work with your nervous system, and if you don't know your nervous system, it's going to be a little bit harder for you to pick it up and figure out what's going on. So again, it's good to check in with yourselves.
Yeah, learn how your body works and
Yeah.
functions, so that as you're receiving information, you could then convey that. Or if you're just an at-home person, not trying to do this at all as a developing medium, student medium, or professional medium, that you may feel them actually touch your hands or touch
Yes.
your face.
Yeah.
You can feel them. Sometimes you can really feel them praying over you during those times. And like a tap on the shoulder that gets you, to turn in those ways. Or maybe
Yeah.
you're driving down the road and you could feel your dad is in the passenger seat, chatting with you about things, and you just sense the presence. You don't
Yes.
necessarily see your dad in the seat next to
Yeah.
you. You can feel him, and then you might feel him think talking with you during that.
Yes.
Hey, this is one of my favorite places, or hey, I'm thinking this is good, the place you should take the car to instead of that other one. Like, you'll just sort of feel him around during those moments. It's just an example of how clairsentience can come through in an everyday
Exactly.
circumstance.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, our loved ones, our guides, our inspirers, they work with us in daily life as a kind of, just to kind of help us through because this plane of reality is rather difficult. Um,
It can be. It can
yeah,
be. But they can also help remind us what a joy it is, and that we're not
absolutely.
walking this path alone. So let's give them some more juicy ideas of how clairsentience works, like examples that
Yeah.
you have noticed in your own readings or in your own communications with your loved ones in spirit. How have they shown up for you in feeling ways?
Um, I know taking on the mannerisms of the spirit loved one is a big part of that. So I don't tend to talk with my hands, but sometimes I interact with spirit people that do, or I want to pick up a pen off of my desk and start tapping it, or I want to tap one of my legs, or I feel a newspaper in my hand for newspaper readers, the musical instruments. Those are all part of it. How I emote even.
Yeah,
It's very difficult even for like voice actors, singers to change the cadence of your voice. And that happens, because you start to take on, or you'll use the words that they would use,
yes.
um, because you're delivering that very directly, and sometimes I find myself, I don't like to edit spirit. I'd like to give exactly as I'm getting it, but sometimes I feel like I want to pause a little bit and be like, just to make sure that this doesn't get misinterpreted. This is the feeling that comes with it. This is exactly how I got it. So this is the intention. Uh, so,
Mhm.
and I, you know, it's so important that people understand that spirit is not going to waste their energy coming through to yell at you for folding your socks wrong, um, or taking the toothpaste out of the tube. um,
But they
the,
can be quirky like that. It just
yes,
depends on that individual.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
think mannerisms, it's one of the ways clairsentience works very strongly. You might
hmm,
start to recognize where you were talking about the posture. Sometimes
yes,
they'll give you the I'm hunched over, or I'm in the bed a certain way, or
yes,
you know maybe you feel I like sometimes I'll feel the wheelchair. My chair turns into a wheelchair.
that's absolutely right.
So
Hmm.
things
You can
like that.
feel atrophy in the leg as well sometimes, versus I have a shaky gait, or I have a bad hip, or I have a bad knee that won't support me.
Right.
That's and it's all nuanced, and it's all,
And some people, sometimes you can feel whether they were a dancer and they really liked
yes,
dancing. Those are fun
those
people.
are fun.
They've got the moves still.
Yeah. The kitchen dancers are my favorite. Or the people that will cut a rug in the living room, on a regular basis, that they would make time to do that within their relationship. So, or
Mhm.
solo, because that's fun too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you feel their physical things that they would have had, medical conditions, health issues,
Yeah.
possibly, as I do, we could sometimes feel how they passed.
Yes.
And if there was a long lead up to it, or if it's a quick passing, and
Yeah.
those sorts of information are conveyed through clairsentience in some
Absolutely.
ways, usually. And now
Yeah.
sometimes spirit doesn't want to share pieces of information about that. And sometimes they do. I keep in mind that they're not going to share everything you think they might share. That's
Yes.
how conversations are. They don't always flow go the way you think they should. So they will share if they can, as they can, in their
Yeah.
own timing with that. And with clairsentience, I've also noticed that if they had Alzheimer's or dementia, that us feel really cloudy in the head,
Exactly. And
like
there's a distinction between that kind of cloudy versus I had pain medication cloudy,
right.
versus I had a brain tumor cloudy.
Mm-hmm.
And all the three of those can feel similar, but they're different.
Right. True. This
Yeah.
is true. And you kind of learn the distinction. And mind you, I am not a medical person. I I I am not a registered nurse or a doctor or any of those things. So I just know my basic body parts, and that's it. So a lot of times it's not like they're going to be able to convey through feeling that it was an aneurysm in the stomach. But
Right.
a lot of times with cancer, I will feel like I'm being eaten, because cancer is a wasting disease. So I'll feel like I'm being eaten. So how do you
Uh,
get cancer? I mean,
Cancer,
I
I
said
have
not get cancer, but how do you feel? Cancer person is spirit going.
I have like 15 or 16 different ways that I perceive cancer.
Mhm,
And it depends on whether it's skin cancer, I will feel the spot and I will feel an erosion.
mhm,
Oftentimes, I will taste platinum. If somebody, especially if they went through a platinum-based chemotherapy, they'll just give me that. They'll give me the symptoms of that, or I'll feel the sores in the mouth if they had that.
mhm.
Because that's, instead of them saying I had cancer, they'll say I went through this treatment for cancer,
Right.
because the loved one would remember that.
Mhm,
Um, or, it separates one person in the family from another set person in the family. They try to get specific with me, which is great. Um,
mhm,
I
mhm,
know, there's, if it's leukemia, I'll feel, bruising, that kind of thing. But sometimes I'll get one and I'll go, can you clarify? And they'll give me another sense, or they'll, just say it, which drop it into my awareness, which is great too.
mhm.
Um, and but I don't know about you. I have certain things like the first time I felt kidney dysfunction was on the right side.
Mhm.
And now every time I felt kidney dysfunction since then, it's always on the right side.
Yeah. It's you build a certain dictionary of feeling, and
Yeah,
that's how spirit usually will persist
exactly.
in giving it to you that way. Oh, like, oh, okay, she understood it that way. That's our code for such and such, this particular sensation. Yeah, so spirit does work that way, usually
Yeah.
pretty consistently. Sometimes things get a little switched up, but for the most part, that usually how that's coming through and the beginnings of your development as a medium, it'll continue to come forward in those ways.
And I think that the spirit world sort of choreographs the readings in some ways before they come through. So I like to imagine that there's a green room before the session happens, where they're like standing around, and it's sort of like they get a prep, from our spirit team, like, okay, you picked her because she's going to understand X, Y, and Z. These are the general things you want to get. I imagine somebody with a clipboard helping them out, and standing by in case they get frustrated, to say she would understand it this way. Use this file from her cabinet. Um,
Yeah, there is to some extent that does happen, and you can feel it's not just uh, the medium, the client, and the spirit. I like to distinguish this by saying it's like a play. there are all these
Yes.
stage hands and props
Yes.
and, you know, usually no pyrotechnics, thank the Lord. But you know, there's that sense of there's a lot at work to make it
Yeah.
happen.
Hmm.
Now, sometimes you can't guarantee that you're going to be able to connect with spirit. You can't guarantee that there will be a
That's right.
connection
Yeah.
with those things, but spirit does their best to try to match or orchestrate things. And the energy that each person brings to reading is very important, especially when you're a clairsentient medium, right? A
Yes.
feeler. So the energy that the client brings to a session can affect how a clairsentient medium is able to work. So if they are highly demanding, argumentative, skeptical, you know, any of those kinds of things, it can really be hard for a clairsentient medium who is working on those feelings,
Yeah.
if that's in if part of the reading, versus a person who's like truly in an open space, truly
Right.
joyfully connecting with their loved ones in spirit.
Yeah.
And there's a vibrancy that vibrational frequency that it occurs in a reading. So then spirit is also doing their work to
Yeah.
to you know, hone in on this particular vibrational frequency that the medium and the sitter or client are sharing. So though I think that's a really important thing when you're working clairsentiently to keep in mind. And that if you are a client having a reading, be cognizant of what kind of energy you're bringing to that occasion and how that it does affect things. It'd
Yeah.
be like laying down music and you have different musical instruments and everybody's a musical instrument, and it can sound really discordant if there's, you know, the clarinet just was squeaking, or the violin screeched, or you know, that those kinds of things. It doesn't make for a beautiful symphony of spirit.
Exactly. Exactly. And
Yes.
that's so important because we do you know, the people that come every once in a while and they just do this. Prove it to me. You know, it's like, are their spirit people going to necessarily want to be involved in that process, number one? Um, and so that's something. Number two, you know, we connect with their energy, the energy of the client, and we're sort of bouncing, we're forming that bridge that we're,
Yes.
you know, working off of. So yeah. And I know you've probably, I know for myself, I practiced what's referred to as flat mediumship. Um, where, you know, either it's a, you know, especially as training exercise, right? So all I would have is a telephone number, and I wouldn't talk to the person on the other end, or all I would have is a first name, and I would have them sit at the same time that I'm sitting, and I would write everything out, um, you know, and not have that kind of connection. And it's like, but it's so much better and more meaningful to me and to, I think, the spirit world to have. I mean, spirit will take any kind of contact. They will, they are so thrilled to be heard. But yeah, it's much, much, much better to connect,
Yeah, flat mediumship does not,
openly.
if you're a clairsentient medium, it does not feel good. It feels
Um,
wrong. It
yeah,
feels very much like you're betraying the emotions of the occasion.
yeah,
And that the feeling that is part of that relationship dynamic
right.
doesn't really happen.
And
And
you can get
it's
facts.
sad.
You know, it's very, but it's dry.
It's very dry. There's no juiciness to it. You don't feel the uplifting quality that is
Yeah,
part of being a spiritual medium.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a good training exercise in getting information and making sure that you're really paying attention to the spirit person. I very rarely had a spirit person that was so introverted or so shy, that they were like, I don't even want them in the room. Let's just do this. In fact, once in 20 some years,
Yeah.
and that was the perfect project for them. But otherwise, um, yeah,
Feelings where it's at, people. Feelings where it's
exactly.
at. It's one of the reasons we choose to incarnate on this earth plane so that we can have an experience of high levels of love and connection, and never more so than with mediumship. I mean, it's just like
Yeah.
that's what it's. I do want to give you an opportunity because I know time's uh, trucking along here. Other thoughts, other experiences with clairsentience of how people can recognize it more in their own lives, in their own connection with their loved ones and spirit.
I think that really, the more mindfully we can live, the better off we are, and not to stay out of emotion totally. We're not Spock from Star Trek, like that's a beautiful part of the human experience, but to recognize, oh, okay, this energy, this knowing, this feeling is right over me. And this isn't, I'm doing the dishes and suddenly I feel much shorter than I normally would. And, that sort of thing is kind of a good indicator that, something's going on, that's not normal. What is normal, but it's not normal to you in the moment. So, but I think, and I'm trying really hard not to blur the lines with the clairs as I'm talking to you, because I think that claircognizance comes so closely connected with that,
Mhm.
which is that sort of, gut knowing, or coming into, having something drop into your awareness. And those two can be so so closely linked with like, um, oh, I'm aware of that somebody is with me, and it's like, and I know who it is.
Right.
And that's a really, but honestly, if you close your eyes and you train and you think about the people that you love, you would be able to conjure up the feeling of what it is to be with them.
And that's a difference.
Yeah.
There's a difference between your imagination working into that
Yes.
way and going and feeling spirit for real. And that's something that
Yes.
people have to work through, of trusting of spirit. But
Yeah.
what I've noticed in terms of this myself is, uh, if I feel spirit, the first person that pops in my head, that's who it is. Because you recognize their particular vibrational frequency. Everyone has a vibrational
And that's my
frequency that's
point.
uniquely theirs. It's their
Yeah.
energy signature.
Yeah.
And when we come in contact with them, they're like, oh, that's that radio station. I recognize that one. And you tune to it, and then you feel spirit even more strongly once you've had that recognition of, oh my goodness, my grandma's right here. Hi,
Yeah.
grandma. Oh,
Exactly.
I'm so glad you're here. Like, oh yes, you saw that's your favorite color of rose that we just got. Oh, that's
Yeah.
perfect. Or you can feel them guiding you in other ways with their commentaries or
Yes.
their feelings or sensations they have about other
Yeah.
people in the family. So those are
Hmm.
some ways that I've noticed that in clairsentience, they can
Yeah.
share their opinions, they can share their feelings, of, yay or nay about things.
I, yes. And I think you clarified the point that I was trying to make a lot. But also, you would hear the old time spiritualists say, don't call upon your spirits, which is not meaning don't talk to them, don't include them, don't invite them. But it does definitely mean don't treat them like vending machines. Well, since you're over there, can you get me the winning lottery ticket and and make sure that little Johnny gets an A on his test, sort of thing. Um, but if it helps you to use that energy of, I remember what it's like to lock into their energy because I know what they feel like, and kind of putting that invitation out there.
Yeah.
It works both ways. You can
Mhm.
do that.
Mhm.
You don't just have to wait for them to pop in.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a gentle request rather than
Yeah.
a demand that
Yeah.
facilitates healthy and true spirit contact.
Yes.
And that is something that, you and I will always advocate for, that people embrace things in that healthy, sacred, joyous way of connection with their loved ones.
Yeah.
And that we do have to set our boundaries, as mentioned before,
Mm-hmm.
and that we need to know that as much as we may have felt a reliance with them here on the earth plane, things are a bit different, and they will try to help where they can, but they can't do it for us. They
No.
can't infringe upon our free will or how things are manifesting in our life. They can just kind of add their power. It's like that power of prayer. It multiplies the energy and helps to facilitate more joy or more peace in that particular moment. One of
Absolutely.
the things I think it'd be good to talk with them about, and then we should get closing here. Oh, and I have an announcement too, so stay tuned. But when people are connecting with spirit, that if they feel that it's not the appropriate time for spirit to be visiting with them because they're
Yes.
doing something else, they're at work, whatever it is, you can always tell the people in spirit, listen, come back at this particular time. I will sit in meditation, in prayer, and I'll really let myself have awareness of you in those moments. Please
Yeah.
come back. And by setting an appointment time, it does work. It does
Mhm.
work. It helps if you're kind of in a more relaxed state, kind of maybe in that kind of half awake, half asleep space. It's a little easier to feel spirit during those moments. But I just wanted to let you know you can set that kind of healthy boundary as well. So just because they're popping in doesn't mean they get to take over your show. It'd be like if um if you had a
Yes.
really pushy grandmother and like a person, you might want to just tell them, not now. I
Yeah.
love you, but you have to come back later. And it's okay to have those healthy boundaries, especially because you need to be able to modulate how you feel.
Exactly. And it's really important within your own spiritual practice, I'm going to call it. If you set a regular time to check in with yourself, but for people who are neurodivergent in some capacity, um, and that could just be that they're going through something that it's harder for them. There's the old joke about you should meditate for at least an hour a day. Unless you're busy, then you should meditate for two. Um, but it doesn't have to, if something is going on that you cannot get your mind to settle, doing a guided meditation, doing a moving meditation, doing something that is going to free you up so that the body, it's like, okay, the body's busy, so now the mind can open to that energy.
Yes.
A lot of people need to go and just kind of take a little walk, be out in nature, or sit with your houseplants. They enjoy the attention as well, if that's the closest you can get, because it's not always a beautiful day in Western New York. Sometimes it's snowy and quite cold.
True.
um, and really, don't shame yourself if you don't ever feel like you're failing in your spiritual journey, I guess is the point I want to get across. So if
Yes.
you need to connect and use a tool to connect in another way, but still keep that appointment for yourself
Yeah.
because it's really
Energetic self-care is very important. And Movement really
Yeah.
helps, especially if you're a person who tends to keep or trap energy within your body. And one
Yeah.
of the shows coming up soon, we're going to talk about energetics and movement and how you
Brilliant.
can work through some of the energy blocks that are occurring within you. And that's valid if you're a medium, a healer, or just a person who feels that within yourself. I think you're going to look forward to that show. Um,
Perfect.
this has been great. And to your point about practice, setting that aside regular practice time so you can mind, body, spirit,
Hmm.
align yourself and attune yourself to spirit really helps.
Yes.
Just as an announcement for people, I do have a mediumship development circle that is on Monday evenings. And on February 27th, a new round of my circle series will begin. It's a 9-week circle series. And you can find out more about that on my website, willawhite.com. And you can certainly sign up if you're wanting to know more about how your mediumship works. You will be put into practice sessions on Zoom where you'll give and receive messages with people, because you got to get in the water, right? And
Yes.
each week we'll have a different topic to help clarify ways that spirit can work with you, and you'll have an opportunity to practice and build on your knowledge. That is available for all levels. So if you're a beginner, it's a-okay. Intermediate or advanced, it's a-okay. That's set up in that particular way. Another exciting announcement I have is that I have a 3-month mediumship immersion program that also starts on February 27th, and it will combine the Monday night circles, and there'll be some Saturday intensives to really get deeper into a message. Now that is geared for people who are not beginners. So if you don't know how you connect with spirit, you don't have a sense of your clairs, or you haven't, gotten some things that you can feel are evidential from spirit, this is not for you. This is for people who have already sensed spirit, can offer a message, and really want to build their mediumship. We're going to go into a deep dive into the medium's message. So construction of a message, how to dig deeper for information, how to use juicy language, what to do with rejection, negative things that might come forward, all of that. So it's a great 3-month immersion program. And the class size for that is limited. You can find out more information about that on my website as well. And for those of you who are gearing up for the Lily Dell summer season, I know a lot of mediums are starting to get booked in for certain dates. They will eventually, hopefully in the next month or so, have the 2023 summer season catalog. If you want to put on your calendars, the opening weekend is June 23rd. And it'll be a 10-week summer season program of events. There'll be daily events, mediumship and healing, message services, lectures, workshops. Everything happens in through the summertime. People are already contacting me to get scheduled.
Yes.
So those are some important things. And if you want to know more about Celeste Elliott, you can go to celesteelliott.com.
Mhm.
And I know Celeste also teaches and has her own classes that she does, along with her podcast show that will start up again in the next few weeks.
Yes.
So great. Well, thank you for being on the show today, Celeste.
My
And
pleasure.
sharing
Yeah.
great conversation that we could share about feeling clairsentience. It's a wonderful soul sense, and I'm going to do my best to carry on the rest of the clairs in this series so people can benefit from that. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and tuning in, and for all your lovely comments and support of this particular show, Wednesdays with Willa. All right, everyone. Bye-bye.